So this is lesson 10, the final lesson in the booklet, unit 2.1 on classification and biodiversity. The lesson objectives for this lesson are learning to understand the use of biological control agents and possible issues surrounding this, such as the impact on introducing an alien species on local wildlife. So in this first image, we can see our friend, the ladybird. Ladybird's quite a pretty insect, and they are used as biological control agents. So people can actually purchase ladybirds online, believe it or not. If you type into Google, you can buy either ladybirds that are adults, as we can see in the picture here, or you can buy ladybird larvae, which look completely different to ladybirds. And ladybirds have a ferocious appetite for aphids, for green fly. And here you can see them munching on the green fly on this stem here. So just in case you're not believing whether or not you can purchase ladybirds online, we can see our website here. I just typed in buying ladybirds UK. A pack of 25 adults is $16.99 from this particular seed company here. But if you want to buy the larvae, there you get more for your money, $16.49. You release these into your garden. You don't have to use then pesticides to kill things like whitefly and greenfly and aphids that we can see our ladybird munching on here. Obviously the delivery time would be quite quick for receiving these ladybirds in the post, otherwise they wouldn't survive. So carrying on then. Biological control is the term that we use as an alternative to using pesticides, and it involves either using a biological species or a biological agent to control the population size of another. The organism used is called a biological control agent. So basically we need a predator that will eat the prey that's causing the problem, and the prey is the pest, the nuisance. By releasing a natural predator into the crop growing area, the number of pests can be reduced. However, this can have unforeseen consequences as the number of different organisms in the food web are changed. And there have been examples of the predator becoming a more serious pest than the original problem. So we're going to talk through a couple of examples. So the first one, in Australia, they had a huge problem with the prickly pear cactus of Pontarddulais. Okay, this cactus was introduced to Australia in 1840, and it very quickly spread over large areas of land, making it unsuitable for farming. So this is what the prickly pear cactus looks like. So if we do a little Google search, here we have it here, in the Australian outback, and it very, very quickly spreads across the country. So in Australia, they've had huge problems with it. So what scientists decided to do is to look at what ate the prickly pear cactus. So in Argentina, they found a moth caterpillar called Cactoblastis cactorum, and they introduced this moth caterpillar, so you can see it here, it's quite pretty, yellow and black stripes, to Australia, and sure enough, this thing started to eat the prickly pear cactus. Increased in numbers, and the caterpillars of the moth consumed the cacti. Over a period of a few years, it greatly reduced the amount of this prickly pear cactus in Australia, so it helped to control it. So that's one example. Another example up here, this insect is called a parasitic wasp. A parasite is an animal that lives off another animal. And these particular parasitic wasps, they like to eat whitefly. Whitefly cause a huge amount of problems in greenhouses where crops are grown. And so if we introduce the parasitic wasps, they don't cause any damage to the crop we're growing, but they do like to eat their way through the whitefly. And so we don't have to use any pesticides to control those insects when we're growing our crops in the greenhouse. This poor little fella in the corner here, this rabbit, okay, has a disease called myxomatosis. The myxomatosis virus was actually deliberately introduced in Australia again to control the rabbit population. The rabbit population had got out of hand because rabbits notoriously breed very high numbers of their baby bunnies. And so the Australians decided to introduce this virus into the rabbit population to cause what we call a cull. A cull is kind of like a mass death of a group of organisms of the same species. However, when they introduced this virus into rabbits in Australia, the rabbits in Australia picked up the virus, and sometimes some of those rabbits got exported to other countries. And myxomatosis did eventually come to the UK as well. So I have been down Pembroke Beach, and on a number of occasions seen poor little bunnies here. You can see their eyes start to weep, and they can't see, their vision is reduced, and they're very, very unwell. So sometimes you see wild rabbits in the UK that are infected with myxomatosis, and obviously it will spread amongst the wild rabbit population very, very quickly. Biological control reduces the population of the pest, but sometimes doesn't actually completely remove the pest. So in this final example that we've got here, again, this is an Australian example, and it's to do with cane toads. So sometimes the control species does something completely unexpected. So in Australia, they had a huge problem with a beetle. The beetle was called the cane beetle, and cane beetle like to eat sugarcane. And sugarcane was quite a big crop that was being grown in Australia. And they didn't want to use pesticides because they accumulate in the food chain. So they thought they'd look at what ate cane beetles and introduce those instead. So they found the Hawaiian cane toad. So the Hawaiian cane toad is not native to Australia. That means it doesn't normally live there. It is what we call an alien species. So they introduced the Hawaiian cane toad, and sure enough, the Hawaiian cane toad gorged himself on cane beetles and started to decline the number of cane beetles. However, it had very little effect on the cane beetle population totally, and instead the cane toads have reproduced rapidly, and they've spread across the northeast of the country. They are poisonous. They've caused reduction in the populations of the native toads, the ones that normally live in Australia, because they are competing with them for space and for food. And these cane toads are causing more damage than the pest they were supposed to control. Just to give you an idea of what the size of one of these cane toads looks like, they are notorious in Australia. You can see here this person holding the toad is absolutely huge. It's actually illegal, though, to kill cane toads. The legal method to kill a cane toad is apparently to, if you find one, to put it in your freezer. And obviously the severe cold will slowly anaesthetize the cane toad and kill it that way. You're not allowed to intentionally go out and shoot these things or kill them in any other method. Although I would imagine many of them get splattered on the road by drivers as they're coming past. So we can see here's our population growth curve like we saw in an earlier lesson with our cane beetle. And you can see the prey population grows at the same time, so does the predator one, and then it dips back down again. But overall, it didn't actually impact the total numbers of cane beetles in this example. A bit more of a local example. Japanese knotweed. I know there's quite a lot in and around Gorsinen area, little patches of it in around Pontarddulais. We see it everywhere. It's a growing problem. It says it's invading a town near you. When we go on our field trips down to Pontarddulais, there used to be a tiny patch of this by the side of the river, just as you go over the little stream. And this has been reduced by the locals, slowly removing it. You have to be careful because even if you cut off a small piece of this leaf and dropped it somewhere else, it would very, very quickly grow. And it does impact on the price of your house, okay? Because if you have this in your garden, it's going to reduce the price that you could potentially sell your house because it is an alien species. Obviously, it's been introduced from Japan. That's where its name comes from, Japanese knotweed. So somebody obviously introduced it thinking it looked quite pretty, the shape of the leaves, but it's very, very invasive. Very small amounts of it, okay, can grow very, very quickly. And the only way to kill it is to actually kind of like burn it down to the ground and then use chemicals, which are not great for the environment. The sycamore, quite a pretty tree, and we always in the autumn time see the seeds So this is the actual seed up here, and these are the wings, the little helicopters. The sycamore is not native to the UK. It was introduced because it was what we describe as a specimen plant. It looked pretty. Perhaps somebody wanted it in their garden. The big problem is that it doesn't support very much insect life. Not a lot of UK insects like to eat its branches or the leaves. And so the problem this causes is the tree very quickly stops light reaching the floor of the area that it grows in. It doesn't support any insect life. So as a result, it doesn't encourage birds into the tree to eat the insects. And so we don't have very good food chains. And if this is competing with our native plants and our native trees, it's very, very quickly going to wipe out then our insect population and our bird population that live on the insects that would normally grow on trees native to the UK. So some animals and plants have been introduced deliberately because people want to control the size of the population, or perhaps because they like what the plant looks like, and some have been introduced accidentally into areas where they don't naturally occur. Some will become invasive and cause problems, some don't cause any problems. Invasive species are those that grow faster than our native species, and therefore they upset the natural ecosystem because the native species may not be able to compete with them quickly enough. Research into the use of biological control agents takes place on a worldwide basis to understand how best to control alien species and to share that information globally. And during research, trials would be needed to assess the effects of biological control agents, particularly on non-targeted native species, the impact that they have on those. So there's a couple of questions, page 39, about why may cane toads have reduced the population of the native toad in Australia, and then a question about the sycamore. It's not native to the UK, so what kinds of problems may it cause in the UK? And that is the end of your booklet. So there will be a short self-marking quiz appearing on Moodle soon. So if you can complete that, it will give you a little bit of a guidance as to where you've understood the work in this first booklet and which areas perhaps you need a little bit more work and a bit more revision on. Okay, thank you.